Hi, everybody. I have my good friend Frank Turek on today. Dr. Frank Turek is a Christian apologist, best-selling author, and the speaker behind the well-known campus presentation, I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist. In today's video, we cover a lot of ground. We talk about his recent UC Berkeley event that drew violent activists. We also talk about why violence has become a predictable feature of progressivism and how groups like Antifa and modern socialism shape that environment. Frank shares what it's actually like to speak on college campuses today and why challenging students can be both exciting and exhausting. We also discuss Brave Books, a fantastic resource for you and your family, and how to help kids navigate through cultural topics. We discuss what's called the Dunning-Kruger effect and the rise of overconfident misinformation, and our thoughts on children, smartphones, and social media. We dig into the virtue of courage, biblically and philosophically, and why it's one of the most essential virtues that we need right now. From freedom of speech to critical thinking, we talk about why testing claims, demanding evidence, and rejecting sensationalized conspiracy theories is more important than ever, especially when those falsehoods have led to real death threats toward Frank and others. And finally, I ask Frank about the virtues we should remember in honor of Charlie Kirk. Let's get into it.
Lots been happening in 2 months, so about doing the best I can. So we've just got to keep moving forward because hearts are tender since Charlie's murder. And so we've been doing a lot of colleges, as you know, and got several more scheduled and a ton more scheduled for the spring. And we got to get you out there, Melissa. We got to get you out there on a college campus.
Let's go upset some demons. Let's do this.
That's right. That's what we're. Well, we upset some demons the other night at UC Berkeley.
Okay, tell me about that.
UC Bezerkely, we call it. Well, you've seen it on the news. Antifa showed up, and I don't think the university did enough to protect people trying to get in. I mean, there were 2,000 seats or more inside, and only 1,000 people got in, and it was oversold.
A night of protests turns bloody at the final stop of the controversial college tour. Several protesters taken into custody outside the Turning Point USA event at UC Berkeley.
The Turning Point USA tour ended here at UC Berkeley with hundreds packed into Zellerbach Hall. Outside, students and other demonstrators chanted and protested throughout the night.
They're using our facilities and resources to do it, which I think is just crazy. It's like, go somewhere, we don't want you here.
Events like this should never happen on this campus or anywhere again.
Yelling at police who are standing there ready with riot gear. Tensions escalated. Fights, fireworks, smoke bombs erupted, creating chaos and confusion. At least one person was hurt, multiple arrested. Attendees and supporters of Turning Point's founder Charlie Kirk not deterred.
So the university did not do enough to protect people coming in. And there's already a lawsuit that started by Harmeet Dillon, who is the top civil rights attorney for the government. And she has already sent out a letter to Berkeley that they need to maintain all records and all video and all this because there's no heckler's veto that you have on a public school campus. You can't say allow a leftist to speak but not a conservative to speak. You're supposed to ensure equal access according to the Supreme Court and obviously according to the Constitution as well. It's a state school. A private school can do whatever they want, but this UC Berkeley gets millions, if not $1 billion a year of state money or federal money, combination thereof, taxpayer money. And they're not, it appears, plain even-handed with these events. People could not get in. People were intimidated. People were spat on. People were called vile names. Some people were assaulted, as you know.
Oh, yeah. I saw pictures today.
Yeah. In fact, wearing the shirt you're wearing right now, that one guy had a necklace torn off him, a cross. And you can't make this up. You can't make this up, Melissa. But the guy's first name was Jihad. Okay? He's a Muslim that apparently, according to reports, that goes to a mosque in Oakland. And he was trying to hide his identity, but he was a jihadist. And he pulled the cross off this guy who apparently was a Christian there to support the event and be at the event. And he got bloodied up by this guy. They were both handcuffed. Eventually, the jihad gentleman, that's his first name, wasn't much of a gentleman, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
He was charged, but of course he's out on bail already, right? To California, they just let people out who are violent people. And we'll see where it all goes, but hopefully this is a wake-up call for America to say we can't continue to allow Antifa, which is a terrorist organization, to terrorize people, and we can't allow universities to turn a blind eye to this. They have to protect equally any speaker that goes there. Now, inside, we were able to say what we wanted to. We had one Antifa guy, self-identified Antifa guy, ask Rob Schneider a question, a very sarcastic question, to which Rob responded in a very sarcastic way. But he wound up shaking the guy's hand. He said, "You come up here and shake my hand. This is what we ought to be doing. We can disagree on issues, but still treat people like we're made in the image of God."
Yes.
And so we need to be doing that. And there's such a contrast now between the left and the right. The right is fighting for civilization. The left is fighting to tear it down. Now, I have to be cognizant of the fact that we don't want to be like some on the left who tar everybody on the right by saying anybody that has leftist political ideas automatically agrees with Antifa. That's not true. Right? Okay. We have to treat people as individuals. But if you are on the left and you do agree with violence, like apparently a third of college kids now who are liberal think it's okay to use violence to shut up political speech. If you are in that camp right there, you're just wrong and you need to repent, because you ought not be using violence to shut people down who just disagree with you. Whatever happened to inclusion, tolerance, and diversity? I've noticed that people who say that often will not include you and not tolerate you if you're holding a diverse view. If irony could kill, they'd be dead right now.
It's not about love. It's about hating the right people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just made a video, in fact, on this girl, the 16-year-old girl, who was there was a rally going on for her to speak out against the fact that she had to play her sport with a transgender, a boy, basically. And I was confused when I was watching it because I'm like, why is this so noisy? Why is this so loud? I'm like, guys, calm down.
You got it. You got it.
Good afternoon. My name is Frances Doubt.
Are we excited to hear her speak? And then I realized, oh, those are the activists. Like, there's activists outside of this protection ring that they made for this young girl. And it made me lean in a little bit more because I see these activists and they're so mixed. They had the Hamas head covering, right? And then you had LGBTQ, and then you had a Free Palestine, then you had Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, this is interesting. And so it made me kind of dig in more to make a video covering this worldview and why violence is a feature of progressivism. Why they say, yes, we believe in free speech, but if words are violence, then that means that you can actually harm people who you consider to be violent against you. Like I'm like, it's not free speech, because if you control speech, you control thought. And so I think that's part of the reason why we see so much aggression from that sect. And it reminds me of it was a Parks and Rec satirical scene. When every time I hear Antifa, I think of this because have you ever watched Parks and Rec?
I don't think I have.
Yeah,
no.
There's a really funny satirical episode about this cult called the Reasonableists. And the reason why they're called the Reasonableists is that if anybody goes up against them, then they're going to look really unreasonable. And so when I hear anti-fascist or anti-racist or anything, if you go up against them, then you look like you're for fascism or for racism because they're the anti-fascists.
Yeah,
But,
ironically,
yeah,
the anti-fascists are the fascists. They want to shut you
Exactly.
down. Yeah, and that's what happened at Berkeley. Yeah, they wanted to shut
Exactly.
us down.
And I interviewed Dr. Mauser from Southern Evangelical about this very thing, like what is fascism and why is everybody called a fascist? And it's like they glaze over any of us and assume the worst and think that we're just this huge boogeyman enemy, when in reality, We want conversation. We want to dialogue. And this is what your friend Charlie Kirk used to do, right? It's just once we shut it down, once we stop talking, that's when the violence happens.
Yeah, and Dr. Geisler used to say this, my mentor used to say, when people's worldview is challenged, they often, with logic, they often do not respond in logic, they respond with emotion.
Yes.
Now, the left can't logically support their views because they're crazy, they don't work, and they're false. I mean, and yet, since they can't logically use reason to support their views, they emote. Yes. They spit on you. They call you names. They can't have a debate. They'll lose. They can't support their position because it's false. I mean, let's just take socialism for a second.
I was just thinking that. Yeah, keep going.
Let's just, okay, when was the last time you washed your rental car?
Oh, never.
You never wash your rental car because it's not yours. You don't take care of it like it's your own. If you don't have private property, you're not going to have incentive to work, nor are you going to have incentive to take care of whatever the property is. I mean, why is private housing, on average, much better kept than public housing? Because you own it. And people need to be incentivized to work. Why is anybody going to work when they're not going to be incentivized to work? And so socialism fails because it misunderstands human nature. It thinks that people are going to work as much as they can and take as little as they want. In reality, they're going to work as little as they can and take as much as they want.
100%.
So socialism fails because it misunderstands human nature. And yet people out there think it's the solution. It also fails because no one person has the capacity, knowledge, or insight to control the means of production from the top. You heard the new mayor-elect of New York. We're going to control the means of production. How does any one person know how many iPhones to make? Nobody knows. In fact, there's nobody in the world that knows how to make an iPhone. No one knows how to make one. There's no one person that can do it from scratch. The market brings an iPhone together.
Exactly.
Right? Just like there's like no one person. Yeah, there's no one person knows how to make a pencil. Right? Nobody knows how to do it. How do you make a pencil? Well, you got to go to Sri Lanka to get graphite. Really, you do? Well, how do you get graphite out of it? I don't know. How do you, and how do you get it then in the wood? I don't know. How do you cut it? Where do you get the metal grommet? How about the rubber eraser? How do you put all that? No one person knows. And somehow the market does it. Somehow Adam Smith's invisible hand works. That individual people making individual decisions on an area they know about will bring forth these great achievements and these and prosperity that one person at the top could never do.
It reminds me of how it has to work is, well, I just need more power. Oh, look, I can give you all this stuff. I can give you all the free things. And by the way, the reason why we don't have free buses or free childcare, they're holding me back. I need more power. I need more power to make this happen. And so, it's just this domino effect. And I think educating younger people and getting them to think about these things is so important. And that's why going out to these college campuses, I think is vital. I mean, you're going out in a public space and you are wanting to be challenged. It's not just this, let me show you how smart I am. It's no, let's have an honest dialogue about these issues.
But it really starts before college, Melissa. We got to teach our kids from the moment they can understand truth. We need to teach our kids not just the fact that Christianity is true, but some values of Christianity, like responsibility and accountability.
Yeah, like this guy.
Yeah, that guy right there,
like
Milo's Mission.
Yeah,
that's my book from Brave Books, and I think you might do a Brave book too, right? Is that possible?
I might. We're in talks about it. We'll see.
Okay, Milo's Mission teaches accountability and responsibility. This is for kids like 2 to 10, maybe.
My 15-year-old likes it though too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, if you go to bravebooks.com/Frank, bravebooks.com/Frank, you can get that book for free, and they'll then send you a new book on a Christian value or insight. every month. So I have grandkids now. Grandkids love those books, but kids love them too.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to start really young. And of course, we have curricula to teach kids apologetics, evidence for the faith as well.
Mm-hmm.
So if they go to crossexamine.org, click on store or online courses, we have online courses for kids. I mean, we got to start young because when they get to college, their worldview might be set to a
Mm-hmm.
certain extent.
What do they call it? There's like a something Kruger effect, where when new information is given to you, there's just this wave of new knowledge that you
Mhm.
think is just secret and been hidden from you, and it fascinates you.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you just think you have all the answers to this one thing when really you don't know a whole lot about it. I find that when kids have not been inoculated, when they haven't been
Mhm.
prepared, had these hard conversations, they'll go off and hear this brand new piece of information about this thing called socialism and why it's so good, or about how, did you know that gender's on a spectrum and all these things, right? And they're like, what? I've never heard of this before. And this is fascinating. How interesting. And I think that there's this sway into that direction. But if you've had conversations with your kids about all of these things as much as you can, it's a constant, it's not just one conversation, it's a constant one. And you're talking about the hard things, which is on us. We kind of don't want to be uncomfortable, right, with our kids, but we're just setting them up. We're setting them up as sheep for the slaughter.
That's
Is what
right.
we're doing.
Yeah.
And so, you have the colleges, and that's what I think is kind of brilliant about having these conversations on a college campus, is that it's like handing somebody back their brain, right? It's just like, well, why do you believe that? But in reality, I'm hoping that it puts a stone in their shoe.
Yeah, to quote Greg Kokel, stone in the shoe, because when we go to college campus, we're trying to do a couple of things. We're trying to encourage the Christian, equip the Christian, and we're trying to put a stone in the shoe of the skeptics, right? You're not going to convert people, at least, well, anything's possible, but like the Antifa people, they don't want to hear anything, right? They're just emoting. Their minds are closed. They appear to be demonically influenced with all the anger and vile stuff they say. But people in the middle, or people who already agree with you, might be open to learning more. And that's why we go there. It's throwing people a lifeline who are Christians, and it's putting a stone in the shoe of skeptics. But if you start young with your kids, chances are you won't have to rescue them later. I mean, if you ground them in the truth and you talk about these issues, you should be talking about evolution and transgenderism and immigration and social justice and socialism. And you ought to be teaching your kids this stuff before they hear it from the culture. And by the way, they're hearing it from the culture all over the place. I mean, this is really discipling your kids. I agree with Jonathan Haidt, who is an atheist who teaches at NYU. He says nobody under 16 should have an iPhone. You shouldn't be on the internet,
Our kids we don't do social media.
Good.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. Actually, we do smartphones, but we don't do social media. So the only thing they're allowed to do, they don't have access to the internet. We have to have a way to call them, but they don't have flip phones anymore.
Right.
So no internet, no social media. The only thing they're allowed to do is call, text, and listen to music. No apps, no nothing.
I know there's some people out there who are going, oh, Frank, Melissa, if I tried to take the iPhone away from my 13-year-old, that would be World War III. And my response to that is, what's your point? I mean, parenting is hard. Who said it's going to be easy? If you became a parent because you thought it would be convenient, man, did you make a mistake? It's going to be hard, and you should care more about the outcome of your child than the anger of your child when you take something detrimental away from them.
And the why is very important too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I care about you. That's why I'm doing this. If they're that attached to the iPhone, that's already a problem. I mean, if they get super freaked out because you have their iPhone, man, you got some other issue going on.
Okay, so when it comes to like these virtues and these values and everything that we're talking about here, there's one virtue that I kind of want to hone in on that I think I see a lack of, but is one of the most important ones, which is courage. And what I'm seeing in the last few months happen, post Charlie, is the line in the sand. people are really making it clear where they stand because we have to. What have you experienced in the last few months when it comes to this, when it comes to what you've experienced when you've had to have some courage and what you've seen from other Christians in this area?
Well, I think you're right. A lot of people are now telling people where they stand, rightfully so. Charlie used to say this, that he thought one of the great things about courage is you don't need to have any skill. You just have to make a decision. That's all it is. It's making a decision. I'm going to do this. And it's not the absence of fear. If it was the absence of fear, you wouldn't need courage.
Aristotle famously said, without courage, there is no other virtue. That it is the virtue that holds all the other ones in place. Courage, simply defined, is doing the right thing or the good thing when the outcome is uncertain.
You only need courage when you are afraid. So you just got to make a decision to move forward and to make Jesus known, because that's why we're here. We're here to know Jesus and to make him known. That's why we're here. And Charlie was really good at pointing out to people that you're wasting your life. You got this one life to live here. This life is preparation for another life. And what are you doing with your life? He inspired a lot of men in particular to say, yeah, I got to get married. I got to have kids. I got to follow Jesus. And he was struggling with how can he get more women to want to get married? Because there's a big change now in our society, or a big bifurcation. Men in particular, their number one goal, particularly conservative men, number one goal, get married, have kids. Conservative women, that's like number 5 or 6. For liberal women, like the liberals that voted for Kamala Harris, it's like 12 out of 13 get married and have kids. So Charlie, one of the last things we talked about was, how can we get this generation to not only become Christian, but to embrace marriage and family? And he was trying to figure out a way to do that. Particularly, how could he influence ladies to do that? Oh, they're not going to listen to me. Maybe they'll listen to you, Melissa. Maybe they'll listen to Allie Beth Stuckey. Maybe they'll listen to Elisa. Maybe they'll listen to Natasha. That's why you ladies are so important now, because there's a real divide between men and women when it comes to marriage. Many women don't want to get involved anymore, and it's crazy because that's the future of a society. The biological 2-parent family is the future of the foundation of a society. You don't have that, you're going to have disaster. So courage is necessary. Churchill said this. He was probably borrowing from Aristotle. He said, courage is the first of all virtues, because without it, you won't do anything else.
Yeah.
You need courage. So one of the ways you get courage is look around and see other people who are standing up. And when other people stand up, then you feel like you can do so too. Charlie stood up. Charlie was executed for it. But many people have said now, we are all Charlie Kirk now.
Yeah.
We're not going to be quiet. And so I see a revival happening. I just had Greg Laurie on my podcast. He agrees that a revival appears to be happening. But it's going to depend somewhat on us speaking up and making ourselves better ambassadors for Jesus and going out there and making disciples. That's what we got to do. So that's what we're trying to do. It's tiring. We haven't slowed up since Charlie's murder. Many of the events that we had on the calendar, we didn't cancel any of the events. We just kept doing them, and we added events because of Charlie. So that's why we need to get you involved and others involved, because there's a great need out there and a great desire for people to learn more about Jesus.
What would you say to somebody who says that they have courage for the wrong thing, right? So like with the social justice movement, you have people saying that, you got to stand up for what's right and have courage, but the thing that they are standing up for is actually detrimental to society.
Well, what I said the other night at UC Berkeley was, I said, Berkeley is very well known for its stance on free speech. In fact, ironically, in about 1964, 1965, the university did not want different groups tabling, like putting tables out to talk about a particular issue or cause. And it was the liberals who said, no, you need to allow this. And they eventually won. The liberals won the restrictions the university was putting on them with regard to free speech. Well, now it's come full circle. Now it's the students putting restrictions on people saying certain things on campus, but it's also outside forces. In fact, the other night at UC Berkeley, I would say the majority, from what I saw anyway, the majority of people out there were not students. These are adults. These are maybe people paid by George Soros. How do we know? I mean, this was not a student-led protest, it appears. It was organized by Antifa, and it needs to be stopped. What needs to be stopped is people intimidating other people from speaking. Antifa has a right to speak, but not a right to stop others from speaking, and that's what they were doing. What I said at Berkeley was, you guys have been the champions for free speech, but many of you now are atheists. And if you're an atheist, you have no way to ground rights. There are no rights unless God exists. There is no justice unless God exists. It's just your opinion. And people will, by the way, get away with murder because if there is no afterlife and no God to right all wrongs, there is no justice. So you're claiming on one hand you have all these rights and there's a lot of injustice out there and we need to fight for social justice. On the other hand, you're an atheist. There's no such thing as justice of any kind. It's just your opinion. Well, if you just have an opinion, okay, it's just your opinion. It's just a preference. Why do I have to adhere to what you say? I don't, because you're not appealing to a truth outside of ourselves, a standard outside of ourselves that we're all obligated to obey. That standard can only exist if God exists. So in effect, what we're saying here is what I said in the book, Stealing from God. These atheists are stealing from God while they're arguing against him. They're stealing the standard of righteousness and justice. And they're saying, we see all this injustice out there, but they're claiming there is no God. There can't be any injustice if there is no God. There's just things you don't like. There's just things you don't prefer. Oh, so what?
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that because there's a lot to be said about playing the movie forward and the consequences of these ideas. Which brings me to another question, because I remember I had Greg Koukl on a long time ago when I was just learning about like critical theory and what's this woke left thing. And it was a long time ago and I've come a long way since then, but I realized how I took for granted free speech, something as simple as free speech. I just read Live Not by Lies by Rod Dreher.
Yeah, very good book. Yeah.
And I had this two-way of thinking, right? Because I'm like, I understand this. This makes sense. But what about, the people on the other side who have had, a different perspective on it, right? Like, so free speech, right? So, and here's my question with it is, what would you advise to people who love free speech, right? Like, I love free speech. But then you see people like Antifa and you see people who are not just anti-Semitic, but hate the Jews, right? Like death to the Jews, right? Like Nick Fuentes. And you have people who are saying things and teaching things that are actually, they're amassing a following with these terrible ideas that are not aligned with reality, but they're allowed to say them and they're allowed to believe them. What would your argument be even then about why free speech is still so important?
Well, it was a justice many years ago who said the best disinfectant is sunlight, meaning you don't win an argument by just censorship. You defeat bad ideas with better ideas, and you provide evidence for your better ideas. And this is one of the problems that actually occurred during COVID. You remember when the government was trying to censor people who said, hey, the vaccine has problems. And so the Biden administration was literally censoring people and putting pressure on Facebook and other social media sites to say,
worse. The conspiracy theorists went crazy. Yeah.
And here's what they said. After later, when we found out, a lot of these people, what they were saying, these PhDs in epidemiology, they were right. There is a problem with the vaccine. Oh, but the defenders of the censors would say, well, that's what we knew at the time. That's the best information we had at the time, which actually makes matters worse. That's the reason you have free speech, because maybe the information you had at the time is wrong, but if you're censoring all the data against your position, you'll never hear it. So in other than extremely rare situations I'd have to think about, the answer to bad speech is more good speech. Right? Now, there are situations we all know, like you can't shout fire in a crowded theater if there is no fire, right? You can't incite people to violence as Antifa does. That's not protected free speech according to the First Amendment, because the downside of it far exceeds the upside of it in terms of you're actually inciting violence against innocent people. So there are exceptions, but they're rare.
Yeah, I think people struggle with that aspect of it because the consequences for your free speech, right, might be somebody believing lies. But you're right, because you can't shut that down, because then it shuts down your idea, or it shuts down your being able to test what they're saying. C.S. Lewis, I think it was him who said that you fight bad philosophy with good philosophy, right?
Yeah.
You have to have good
exactly.
philosophy, because bad philosophy exists.
That's right.
Which is just a way of thinking. So yeah, you're going to keep going out and doing these other campuses. Let's talk a little bit more about your experience at Berkeley, though, because with the craziness that happened there, I'm actually wondering how many really useful and thoughtful conversations you guys were able to have that you think really made a difference for those college students that were there.
Well, plenty inside the room.
Good.
Because there were about 1,000 inside the room, but people forget. I mean, Antifa tries to shut the event down, and they partially succeed because, not everybody could get in, but there's thousands of people watching online. It's live streamed as well, right? So it's not just the people in the room. And actually, by protesting the way they do, it actually drives more people to watch the content rather than less. So they kind of shoot themselves in the foot when they do that stuff, right?
The Barbra Streisand effect.
Yeah. I mean, I always, when I get protested, I'm like, this is great. More people are going to show up. I remember I was being protested by some LGBTQ group on a college campus once, and I said, this is great. We're going to have to bring in more chairs. And we did, because when people say, you can't hear this, people go, well, maybe I need to hear it. I'm going, that kind of thing. So it's kind of counterproductive to throw a temper tantrum, because all it does is attract attention to the event. I mean, look at this. I mean,
yeah.
I've been on Fox News talking about this, right? Rob Schneider's been on Fox News, right? Everybody's covering it. Even the San Francisco Chronicle covered it. Right? I mean, they're far left. All these news organizations are covering the event now that wouldn't have covered it if nobody protested. So, and do you think the protesters are looking good? Do you think most Americans are going, yeah, I really agree with Antifa. Look at all the vile stuff they're doing. Yeah, that advances the leftist cause. No, they're actually shooting themselves in the foot by doing all this.
Like you mentioned before, the irony of being an anti-fascist group, yet you're trying to shut down free speech. Like a future of fascism.
That's right. That's what we all know, that a man like Charlie Kirk, who invites his opponents to come to the front of the line because they disagree with him, and then he hands them the mic and says, say whatever you want, make your case. Yeah. That's a typical fascist tactic. That's what fascists do. They hand their opponents the microphone and say, you got it. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. What would you say to people who might be afraid to do what Charlie did? Because I think what might hold some people back from having these conversations is their own fear of being challenged. What would you say to that?
Well, get informed, right? And you don't have to do what Charlie did. Charlie going to college campuses and just opening up the microphone on any topic. Yeah, you got to, number one, have some natural talent to do that. And you also have to be informed regarding content. And Charlie had natural talent, but he didn't have all the insights into Christian apologetics. That's why he asked me to help him with it. But he's wise enough. And, I always tell people it could be hard to mentor somebody smarter than you, but not Charlie Kirk, because Charlie Kirk's intellect was only was only exceeded by his humility. You know,
Yeah.
the few things I knew he didn't want it, they're easy for me to say. The few things I knew that he didn't know, he wanted to know because he's a humble guy and he knew he needed to learn certain things. And so we have to have that same attitude. I mean, we don't know all things. We have to get educated from others. In fact, there's only 3 ways you can learn. You can learn from other people and their experience. You can learn from yourself and your own experience, or you can learn from God. That's it. Well, I guess you could learn from Satan, but you don't want to learn from him. But, you know, you know what I mean? I mean, that's it. Your experience, their experience, or God. I mean, where else are you going to get information from? And by the way, most of what we know on authority. That's even true in science. People go, oh, science gives us all this truth. Most scientists can't replicate the experiments they've been told have been done. They have to take it on faith. They have to take it on authority, right? So much of what we know about reality is taken on authority. It's not our own experience. It's the experience of others. It's the accumulated knowledge that we've acquired over time.
Well, and before we mentioned philosophy, Scripture talks about this, you know, there's bad philosophy out there, right? Like bad ideas and the world's wisdom and things like that. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about good wisdom, good thinking, and critical thinking and logic. And I've always thought of critical thinking and logic as like math for thinking. It's a law, right? There's laws of truth is what you're doing whenever you're reasoning with somebody. And Charlie was so good at this. You could tell that he read like philosophers in this area with how to talk with somebody, Socratic reasoning, right?
Yeah.
And I just thought it's just a master class. Greg Koukl, again, same thing. His book Tactics brilliantly lays out just how to dialogue using logic and critical thinking. He doesn't tell you that though. It's like, but each little tactic he gives you is just a way to think. Now, with this, it reminds me of this guy. His name's Warren Smith, I think is his name. You might have heard of him because he went viral a few years ago. The journalist was saying, you know, that J.K. Rowling is a transphobic, you know, that she's, you know, basically this terrible person.
She's had a pretty controversial past. I just want to know, like, what are your thoughts on it? And, like, do you still like her work? She has had a history of being extremely transphobic, I've heard.
Hey, you've heard. So what, can you give me an example?
All Warren was doing is getting him to think about his positions and asking him, you know, like, what do you mean? How is she a transphobe? Where did she say that?
So let's get specific, though. Let's define bigoted opinions. What opinions are bigoted? We're going to treat this as a thought experiment. I'm not going to say what's right or wrong or what way to think. The whole point is to learn how to think, not what to think.
If you look at her Twitter, I think you could see a few things. It was deemed transphobic. I myself...
Do you find that transphobic yourself?
I don't really have an opinion on it, but I'm just going with what a lot of other people have said.
So let's pause there. Let's not go with what other people are saying. Let's try and learn how to critically think. So let's analyze the tweet ourselves. So that statement, do you see anything problematic? Disregarding other people's opinions.
And at the end of the conversation, the journalist backtracks and he's like, wow, I'm kind of embarrassed now, right? Because he was just kind of forced to think about his positions.
Do you think it's fair that that she's being attacked by a large group of people and people are calling her, like you said at the beginning of this conversation, you said, given the fact that J.K. Rowling is transphobic, how do you feel about Harry Potter? Now, retroactively looking at that statement, do you think that was the best way to phrase?
No, I feel like an idiot now.
And then Warren lost his job over it.
So it happened yesterday. I was fired from my full-time teaching position.
He's not a Christian, but I really like it watching his stuff because he can break down arguments real well. And, you know, with that being said, on this topic, I'm finding that one of the best things Christians can do is know about how to reason well, logic and critical thinking.
Guys always used to say that the first thing you got to teach your kids is logic, even before the Bible. Why?
Yes.
Because you need logic to understand the Bible. It's called prolegomena in systematic theology. The first thing you do is learn words, learn grammar, learn language, learn logic, learn, how the world works. In fact, if you think about the first verse of the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What does that verse assume? Well, first of all, it assumes you know language. It assumes you know what a beginning is. It assumes you have some idea of God. It assumes you know cause and effect. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. It assumes things you know about reality just by being a human being. All right? Those are all things that you bring to the Bible in order to understand what the Bible means. And everybody intuitively knows certain laws of logic, but if we're not taught them explicitly, we forget to use them, and we don't realize when people contradict themselves, when they say things like, there is no truth. Hey, is that true? Or they say there are no absolutes. Are you absolutely sure? Or, all truth is relative. Is that a relative truth? Hey, you ought not judge. Then why are you judging me for judging, right? These are all self-defeating statements that people don't recognize because they haven't been taught to use the laws of logic when people say things. They just casually take things in and go, oh, that person said there are no absolutes. I guess there aren't. Oh, they said there's no truth, or all truth is relative. I guess it is, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, I ought not judge. Yeah, I better not do that. Meanwhile, the guy who just told you not to judge is judging you for judging. You've got to learn these laws explicitly and teach them to your kids. If you don't, they're going to buy into a lot of leftist and relativistic thinking. Mm-hmm. In fact, we have a course called Train Your Brain. It's for 6th to 8th graders. And we tell adults to take it because it's for 6th to 8th graders.
Yeah, it's a good course. My daughter took that course. And, the reason why I'm kind of asking this is I'm segueing into a bigger issue that we're seeing in the world, especially at this point. And it's the world of just growing conspiracy. People are making audacious claims, kind of putting ambiguous statements out there, ambiguous proof that sounds really good. Mm-hmm. And I'm watching this unravel and unveil, and I'm like, why can't we implement more of this critical thinking and logic, like testing what somebody is saying? We're so quick to believe the hype and the sensation, and it's really popular. What do you have for us in that regard?
Well, first thing I have is your brand new brilliant video called How to Become the #1 Most Listened Podcast in the World.
Hey, Candy. How you doing? Is it okay if I call you that? I mean, do you prefer it with an I or a Y? No preference? Okay. Anyway, so we're here to talk about how you became the #1 most listened to podcast in the world.
You take on Candace there, and I've taken on some of what Candace has said in my podcast. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Mm-hmm. But first of all, let's make a note that evil up close is horrifying. Evil from a distance is intriguing. Why is it that the #1 podcasts in the world most of the time have something to do with unsolved murders? Right? Why are we intrigued with conspiracies? Why are we intrigued with crime? Why are we intrigued with murder? Why are we intrigued with behind-the-scenes stuff? But we're not intrigued if we see somebody shot in front of us. We're like, that's horrible, right? When evil happens to you personally, it repels you. When evil happens to somebody else from a distance, you go, wow, this is interesting.
Wow. Yeah.
And you know why we're interested in conspiracies is because we know in our own hearts that we are evil, that we will do things to get sex, money, and power. We will sin to get sex, money, and power. And we're thinking everybody's doing that now. This is some kind of behind the scenes conspiracy.
Secret knowledge.
If the current accused killer, Tyler Robinson, is indeed guilty, and most of the evidence I've seen points to him at this point, he did it for sex, money, or power as well, right? He was mad at Charlie, apparently, because of his stance on the trans issue. And so sex is involved, power is involved, and demonic activity is obviously involved. But if you're going to come up like Candace Owens has done and tried to say, well, I don't think this guy's the real killer. I've got all these other theories. You know, why did Mikey McCoy walk away? Why did so-and-so say this at a certain time? Why haven't they come out and refuted this or refuted that? And I'm not trusting the FBI. Why aren't they checking into this? Well, I just had a couple weeks after the murder,
Wallace.
I had Jim Wallace on, who's our mutual friend.
Look, in the end, all of these theories always emerge early, long before the trial begins. Why? Because it turns out the investigators are holding on to a ton of evidence that they have not shared publicly. And while they're holding on to this, something as simple as the autopsy report, they're holding on to this for a reason, right? They want to make sure they've investigated every potential accusation, every potential theory that's out there, and they don't want to release information to the public that later on might jeopardize the investigation. Here's what I mean. Often we'll be interviewing somebody and they'll tell us something that either they have to know from firsthand knowledge, which would implicate them in some way, or they might have heard it online. Well, we don't want them to hear it online. So when they do mention this little weird detail to us, we'll go, whoa, that's not been publicized anywhere.
Here's the bottom line to the interview. Because he's been a cold case homicide guy, he's prosecuted many crimes. The prosecution never reveals what they're doing beforehand.
Mm-hmm.
If they do, they're jeopardizing their case.
Yes.
Okay.
This is so simple.
This is so simple.
So simple. It's not sexy that it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
But Frank, my mind is blown at how people don't understand that, because you're right. Of course, Jim would understand. But the case that keeps coming up for me, I don't know if you're familiar with this case, is the Brian Koberger, Idaho.
Yeah.
Oh, that was rough.
Very wicked. Yeah.
Dude, even then, the murders happen. It's awful. Everybody's just, oh my, shook. And the police, everybody came for the police. Everybody was just like, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I'm like, I like true crime. I mean, my dad was a lieutenant cop. Me and Jim have, a bond because, it's in my family. I know a lot of what he has to put up with because my dad had to. And even me, I'm thinking, guys, that's not how it works. In the world of social media and people having all this information, they have no idea how much pressure, what kinds of horrible things could happen if this case was compromised because y'all just want to be informed. It doesn't work like that.
Let me give a couple reasons why the prosecution does not reveal information beforehand.
Please do.
Like, people will say, well, what about there's a second shooter? There's evidence for a second shooter. Okay, let's say the FBI decided to investigate a second shooter. They can't say that publicly, because if they do, and then someone comes forward and says, hey, I saw the second shooter, they don't know if that guy really did see a second shooter or he just wants to make a name for himself and be the center of attention. So if they reveal that they're looking for a second shooter, they're actually jeopardizing their case rather than quietly looking for the second shooter. Secondly, they don't want to taint the jury pool. Thirdly, they don't want to tip off the defense as to what they're doing. But I can tell you from personal experience that they are investigating conspiracy theories. Why? Because they investigated the one surrounding me. The stupid one where I'm the guy in the white hat next to Charlie, like I'm signaling somebody to steal second base.
And I'm sure somebody apologized to you for the audacious lie.
Well, no, it's still out there. People are still saying you need to explain what you were doing. I'm like, you idiot. First of all, if there's a shooter 200 yards away looking through a scope, he can't even see me. I'm 25 feet from Charlie. And he doesn't need me to signal anything. He knows who Charlie is. He's the only guy under the tent with the microphone. I mean, there's no reason to have anybody signaling anything. It's just complete bogus nonsense.
But it gets clicks and it sounds sensational. There's a psychology around this.
Of course there is.
And
some of it may be motivated by good intentions, like, oh, we're gonna find Charlie's true killer. What was this guy doing down there? Oh no.
Yeah.
And then there's another aspect to this. When we come out and we say, we didn't do it, people still come and say, no, you did. But you know what's happening behind the scenes? The FBI calls me and the FBI says, hey, I just have to ask you this. Were you signaling the shooter? Even had Charlie's attorney on the call with me. Okay. And he was almost apologetic asking the question because he knows how ridiculous it is. And of course I said, no, that's stupid. First of all, there's no need for a signaler. Secondly, I'm his friend. I'm there to help him. And he said, I just had to ask you that. Now, why do they have to ask me that? Because the defense might say, did you check into the guy in the white hat? Mm-hmm. Did you check into the second shooter, with the trunk next to Charlie? Did you look at this, that, and the other? Did you look at why Mikey walked away? They're checking into all that. Mm-hmm. Okay? But they're not going to broadcast it so Candace Owens can be satisfied.
Yeah.
Their job is to convict the real killer, not quell internet conspiracy theories.
Time is the best tattletale when it comes to these kinds of things, because here's what I don't think a lot of people, they're not playing the long game. They're not playing the movie forward because, like, again, with the Bryan Kohberger case, they're going to go to court, right? And you're going to have all this information given. The defense is going to do everything they can, right? Play the movie forward, okay? If he's guilty, if Tyler Robinson is guilty, and he did do this, objectively true, and you're over here saying all this other nonsense, right? It's conspiratorial nonsense. The defense is going to love that. The defense is going to love that. You might actually be contributing to a killer going free.
That's right.
Because of your nonsense with no evidence, right? And that's what I think is like you don't understand, like, the damage that can be done. But also, let's just say, the trial goes on and the evidence is presented that they don't know yet. Like, if the evidence is presented and these, conspiratorial people out there saying the things that they're saying, if they're proven wrong, it's always going to be something that can be twisted somehow, that it's something they knew all along or whatever it is. They're always flame-throwing information, so it's hard to keep up with.
And let's, there's something out there known as Occam's razor, and Occam's razor says that don't multiply causes beyond necessity. It's a philosophical principle that the simplest explanation is probably the right one. Let's just say, Candace is suggesting that Charlie's inner circle betrayed him. Let me ask you a question, Melissa. Do you think Charlie Kirk was such a dunce that he hired people to be his closest advisors who would betray him, that wouldn't be loyal to him? Do you really think he was that unable to see a person's character that he hired a bunch of turncoats? I mean, Charlie Kirk was a brilliant judge of character. He only put people around him who were very qualified to do what they were doing and were very loyal to him. And I know he was loyal to the people around him as well. He would never talk down about anybody, even privately. Even people that were outside of the organization that disagreed with him. Even Candace, he never said anything negative about Candace. He would just be quiet about it because he would talk to her directly if he had a problem with her, and he wouldn't badmouth other people. What's really surprising is that Candace Owens would behave this way, right?
Or even Erica. She hasn't done anything in retaliation.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's because she's a stand-up gal, because she's classy and she knows, she's being told, I assume, by the prosecutors how the case is going. She knows what the truth is.
She knows.
Of course she knows, because they're going to stay in touch with her, all right? Not Candace Owens. I mean, if Tyler Robinson is not the true killer, don't you think his parents would be up in arms? Don't you think they would be going, this is a great injustice? To the contrary, his parents turned him in.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, when you really look at the big picture, you go, yeah, no, it really looks like this guy did it. Was somebody else involved? Well, we'll find out during the trial. But there's too much evidence pointing to this guy at this point. Look, anything's possible, but not anything you say has evidence behind it. And Mikey McCoy's getting death threats. I'm getting like, you never know what can happen to you. You ought to repent. You know, I don't trust you because it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I heard that you guys were getting some death threats.
Yeah. And by the way, why did Mikey McCoy immediately get on the phone? Because he was told to. Charlie drilled into his head, if anything ever happens to me, you call Erica. Why didn't he run to Charlie? Why would he run to Charlie? His security team was all over Charlie, carrying him out within seconds. Mikey did what he should have done, because that's what emergency procedures are all about. Look, I was in the Navy. I know when you prepare for the worst, and when it happens, you just automatically do it. You don't freak out. You go, okay, I got to do this now. Boom. That's what Mikey did. That's what I did because I had thought about it beforehand. I always was concerned that somebody would take a shot at Charlie. And I told myself, if it ever happened, what would I do? I would do anything I could to save him. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try and do something. So that's why I got into the car. I mean, I wasn't even supposed to be in the car, but I was going to get in there because he was like a son to me. Like, what father would say, oh, you take my son, I'll meet you at the hospital. No, you get in the car, right? Not that I could do anything after we saw him, and we're obviously trying to administer first aid, but he was already gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I watched your live stream about that, and it was that was rough. That was rough to get through, to hear you tell that story and what you went through and what you saw. And it's very obvious the love that so many people had for Charlie.
For good reason. For good reason.
Exactly. For all of us loved. It was just, nobody was really made like that, right? Like, you go and the way that he debated and how he matured over the years. That's what caught my eye. I'm like, dang, wow, he really has this truth and love thing down. Let's, you lean in a little bit more. And as far as legacy goes, as we wrap up here a little bit, I want you to talk about those virtues that Charlie had that you would want us, the viewers, everybody, Christians, that we need to remember about him, that we can display in our conduct. How can we have that above reproach position with everything that's going on right now, everything that's thrown in our face? How do we keep our eyes up here, right? And display those virtues that Charlie so graciously and beautifully displayed.
Well, remember, when you're answering a question, you're answering a person. You're not just answering a question. And you don't know what is behind that question or that statement that somebody makes. You don't know their background. You don't know where they're coming from. You don't know what trauma they've experienced or what they've been exposed to or haven't been exposed to. And this is why Paul himself says, look, I was an arrogant and insolent man before the Lord saved me. And you shouldn't be mad at people who disagree with you, because why should you expect people to agree with you? People will say, well, Frank, why don't you get mad at, kids who are angry with you on a college campus? I go, why would I be mad at them? Why should I expect them to agree with me? When I was 23, I didn't agree with my 63-year-old self. Why should I think a 23-year-old now should agree with me at 63? I shouldn't. Let's just have a conversation. Let's see if we can learn from one another. Let's see if I think I'm right about something, I'm going to try and move him closer to that or her closer to that by asking questions and giving some evidence. So Charlie knew that. And the only time Charlie would get snarky with somebody is if they were snarky with him.
Then he held his own pretty well.
Yeah. But I mean, he wasn't, he would say, in fact, that's what he said to me once. He said, Frank, I like the way you do this because you don't try and own people. And I say, no, I don't want to own them. I just want to move them closer to the truth. If I try and own them and, bat them down so, some YouTuber can say, Frank Turek destroys, we don't want that, right?
Yeah.
We want a productive, constructive interaction that tries to move the person closer to the truth and people watching it closer to the truth. Not, oh, look how good a debater that guy is, right? You want to move people closer. So keep that in mind. And that's what Charlie kept in mind. He wanted to debate. He wanted to exchange ideas, and we should want to do the same thing.
I wrote down here, a lot of reason why people believe what they do that might not be tethered to reality.
Of course
and
not.
And I find that, and you're right, that first point is so important to know, like, that's a person you're talking to and they have a reason to believe what they do. And I find that pain a profound distrust in any sort of leadership, right? Which is part of what fuels a lot of conspiracy is,
of course,
it's a profound distrust in information. So you're going to other sources. Pain, distrust, and fear. I find if that is really what is forming what they believe, and if we can recognize that, it helps take down our defenses.
That's right.
Yeah,
Yep.
and then we're able to, I think it's you say this. When somebody's coming up to the podium and they're asking a question, or to the mic, and they're asking a question, it's like you have to sense, do they need a pastor right now? Or do
a
they
philosopher.
need
Yeah, one or the two.
Exactly.
And usually if it's a question about evil, it's often a pastor, which I'm not good at, but
yeah. Well, I mean, it's understanding where they come from. But yeah, man, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You've been through so much the last few months. I want everybody to keep a lookout for what Frank is doing. He's, doing a good work. Please keep him in your prayers. Check out the description for more information. There's going to be videos there related to this conversation, and there's going to be a variety of them because we touched on quite a few things. Frank, is there anything you want to add before we log off today?
Check out the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist podcast. Go to crossexamined.org for where we're going to be and what we're doing. It's all up there. Cross-examined with a D on the end of it, .org. And don't forget Milo's mission.
Yeah.
Go to bravebooks.com/Frank.
Cool. Thanks for coming on, Frank.